She tilted her head, not to listen, but to watch you explain yourself into smallness. You thought her silence was confusion. It wasn't. It was selection. Each word you poured out was another soft nail in the coffin of your mystery. You built it with your own need to be understood. She didn't interrupt. She didn't have to. The moment your voice rose in tone, reached for logic, justified your intentions, you had already crossed into the frame she was resetting from hunted to hunter, from accused to judge. Your guilt was never the problem. Your defense was... You spoke for 10 minutes straight. She blinked twice. Somewhere inside that blink, the power dynamic flipped like a hidden card, and you were the one still begging the dealer to explain the rules of a game already over. If this whisper already lives in your stomach, let it echo. Like the video, leave the wound open in the comments. Subscribe, and stay near the silence. You think you're speaking, but something older than you is confessing. It begins the moment your chest tightens the irrational dread of being misunderstood. You tell yourself you're clarifying, but beneath that, like a tremor under clean marble, is the need to be absolved. You say, "That's not what I meant." But what you mean is, "Don't abandon me." And that panic is never loud, only precise, a single drop of fear rippling through each sentence. She doesn't need to interrupt. She only needs to wait. You explain because you need the story to survive. But what she hears is not the story. She hears your dependency on the story. That's the first fracture. She senses you cannot rest in ambiguity, that you are possessed by the need to be interpreted gently. That need is not masculine. That need is feminine, a trembling openness asking to be soothed. And so, with each new justification, you invert the dance. The one who explains is never in control. The one who watches, listens, chooses when to speak, that is the one who holds the frame. You think your clarity is strength, but she smells it for what it is, surrender masked as coherence. The first time you over-explained, it felt noble, transparent, adult. You had been accused of indifference, perhaps, or coldness, or delay in response. And so you opened your mouth, and in came the flood. "No, I didn't mean it that way. I just thought..." And already your breath had left you. You didn't notice her shift, but she noticed the shift in you from center to supplicant. She does not crave logic, she craves leverage, and your over-explanation hands it to her like a sealed letter signed with your anxiety. You think her gaze is soft. It is velvet. Velvet wrapped around a trap you keep triggering. A smile that waits for you to reveal your weak spot, not because she's cruel, but because you are already bleeding from it. The feminine unconscious does not ask for control. It waits until you offer it, nervously, hunched in syntax. You want her to understand you, but she wants to feel you break your pride for her. Each sentence you use to protect yourself becomes another cord tying your hands behind your back. You say you're just being honest, just being real. But it's not honesty, it's a bribe. You're trying to purchase mercy with transparency. That is never a fair exchange, and she knows it. Her silence does not mean confusion. Her pause does not mean hesitation. Those moments are not absences, they are architecture, rooms in which you hang yourself, lovingly, voluntarily, on the hooks of your own narrative. She will nod. Slowly, she will say, "I see," but she will not soothe you, because the moment she does, the game resets. No, she lets the discomfort linger. That's how she learns your hierarchy of fear. What are you most afraid of not being seen as? Honest caring, noble masculine. Every word you choose reveals that answer more precisely, and once she sees it, she owns it. You ask her, "Do you understand now?" But you don't mean it. What you mean is, "Am I safe again? Am I still worthy of warmth? Have I closed the gap your silence created?" She doesn't answer. She tilts her head again. The head tilt is not a gesture of confusion. It's a test. It says, "What else will you give me to get back into my grace?" You give more. You start explaining your explanation. You start contextualizing your clarification. You begin referencing your childhood, your exes, your mental state, your horoscope, anything to build a fortress around the wound. But the fortress is the wound. And Freud is whispering now. Not from Vienna, but from inside your bloodstream. The unconscious always speaks first, and your unconscious has chosen her approval as its God. You didn't mean to confess, but you already have. Not with words, but with compulsion. She sees that now, that you are driven not by desire, but by debt. You owe her an image of yourself she did not even ask for, and that image is collapsing under the weight of your explanations. She is not punishing you. She is simply watching the structure fall. And the more you try to keep it standing, the more she sees it is not a man before her, but a boy playing defense against an imagined mother. Every man who over-explains becomes the son of his own fear. And the feminine sees it, not with cruelty, but with hunger. Because if she can't feel your center, she will test your periphery. If you won't hold silence, she will make you earn the noise. And if you try to make her feel safe through words, she will wonder why you aren't safe in silence. That is the paradox you never understood. Your long explanations are not proof of your virtue, they are evidence of your disorientation, and disorientation smells like blood. She does not interrupt you, she lets you finish. She even smiles that soft, ambiguous smile that makes you believe you've just passed some invisible trial. But deep down, something's shifted. She's no longer inside your story, she's outside it, examining the seams, watching how you patch it with need. Later, when she withdraws, when she grows cold, you'll replay the conversation, confused. You'll say, "But I was honest. I was clear. I opened up." Yes, and that is why you lost her. The velvet trap was never hers. You wrapped it around yourself. You pulled it tighter with each paragraph. You hung your masculinity on the coat hook of her judgment and asked her not to wrinkle it. And then you called it transparency. She did not ask for a monologue, but she accepted it. She let you audition, and the more you tried to be chosen, the more she saw she could do without you. This is not a game. This is instinct. And the feminine instinct does not care about your words, it cares about what your need to speak reveals. You are not powerless. But the moment you chase her understanding, you become available for manipulation, not because she is wicked, but because you are exposed. And every exposure is an invitation. You still believe that being misunderstood is a danger, but the real danger was the urge to prevent it. The terror of being misread, the desperate need to hold the reins of her perception. That terror is not love. That terror is self-abandonment in slow motion. She didn't reject your words. She rejected your collapse into them. You thought you were protecting the connection, but you were betraying the core, the part of you that knows silence is not failure. That mystery is not guilt. That sometimes the most masculine sentence is the one that never leaves your mouth. And you wonder why you still feel small, because your truth was not in what you said. It was in the fact that you needed to say it. There's a moment so slight you miss it when her gaze stops being human, not cold, not cruel, just detached. Like the light flickering behind her eyes is no longer curiosity, but surveillance, not "Who are you?" but "What can I do with this?" That shift is the unconscious moment she becomes examiner, and you subject, not man, but case study, a file on her inner desk, waiting to be labeled. And the funny thing is, you offered yourself up. You weren't forced. You brought your wounds, your intentions, your timelines, your past, laid them down in logical rows, hoping that transparency would protect you, hoping that context would preserve dignity. But something shifted when she didn't nod at the right time, when her silence stretched longer than expected. You panicked, you dug deeper, and she listened not for empathy, but for leverage. Because she's not listening to your truth, she's watching what your truth needs from her. You think confession is intimacy, but it isn't. Not when it's uninvited, not when it's compulsive. That's not connection, that's exposure. And the more you explain, the more the intimacy tilts. Suddenly, she's the one sitting upright. You're the one leaning in. She is the mirror, and you are performing for your reflection in her. And the mirror has teeth. You do not see it yet. You're still entranced by her calm, her furrowed brow, her hand resting beneath her chin. You mistake the analyst for a lover. You think she's trying to understand me, but she's not. She's cataloging you. The very tone in your voice becomes data. That small catch in your breath when you say your mother's name noted. That overly rehearsed excuse about why you were late noted. The speed at which you leap to self-defense when she goes quiet underlined. You're not conversing. You're diagnosing yourself, and she's letting you. Because once you begin diagnosing, you become divided. You split. One part explains, the other part performs the explanation, and she, standing outside it all, becomes the only intact witness to your fracture. You wonder why you feel smaller after the conversation, because you handed her the scalpel and begged her to notice how steady your bleeding is. What you call being real is a desperate offering. Please see me as safe. Please see me as right. But what she hears is, I need you to approve this version of myself. And that is a dangerous sentence to whisper, even if only through body language. Because the one who needs approval never owns the frame. And she knows that. Her quiet isn't emptiness. It's strategy. The same way a therapist learns to say, at the perfect moment to keep you unraveling. She is not evil. She is not conscious of this, but she is female, and the unconscious female gaze does not merely observe, it reflects with distortion. And the more you speak into that distortion, the more your own voice becomes a weapon against you. You told her about your fears, your history. You even said, "I just want to be understood." She smiled softly, but that smile was not intimacy. It was permission. Permission for you to keep going, to dig deeper, to unveil your subconscious weaknesses under the illusion of shared safety. But it wasn't safe. It was sterile, a hidden operating table disguised as a conversation, and you laid on it voluntarily. Freud would whisper not with judgment, but with eerie fascination that the unconscious is not moral. It doesn't care if the outcome is loving or cruel. It only cares about patterns. And your pattern is this: you over-explain when your masculinity is under threat, not with fists, not with dominance, but with clarification. And every clarification makes her more powerful. Because each time you answer the unspoken accusation, each time you preemptively defend yourself, you give her the authority to judge. The examiner is not elected. The examiner emerges when you offer the frame of explanation too early. And once she has it, you cannot take it back. You'll try. Later, you'll notice the power shift, and attempt to reset, maybe with charm, maybe with withdrawal, maybe with a sudden joke or a shift to touch, or an "I don't want to talk about this anymore." But it won't work, not because she's stronger, but because you've already obeyed the mirror's authority. The teeth are hidden, but they've bitten, and that bite is psychic, deep. You carry it out of the room with you. You feel it in the way your words become careful, in the way you rehearse your texts, in the way you pause before saying, "I just feel," and then delete the sentence. She may never speak of it again, but you will live under its weight, and the saddest part, you will blame her. You will say she manipulated you, that she doesn't care, that she turned the tables. But none of that is true. You handed her the gavel. She simply didn't give it back. Because the unconscious feminine doesn't seek to dominate through action. It dominates through reception. She waits. She watches. And when your voice cracks under its own weight, she marks it not out of cruelty, but because nature always studies the imbalance. You gave her a performance. She gave you analysis. And now the curtain will not rise again. You will miss the days when she interrupted you, when she debated, when she misunderstood you out loud, because at least then you were equals. But now she only watches. And her silence is not ignorance, it is possession. You try to get it back. You say, "What are you thinking?" You say, "Talk to me." You say, "You're being distant." But she is not distant. She is elevated, and you are stuck in the role of the man who must explain himself forever, trying to climb out of the hole you built with your own articulate grief. This was the mirror with teeth, and you kissed it with your own reflection. It began as kindness. You apologized to soothe her, a simple gesture, a balm. But beneath the words "sorry," something ancient stirred, a shape not born of morality, but of survival. You weren't apologizing for a mistake. You were apologizing for disrupting her emotional sovereignty. And that act, quiet, deferential, bloodless, was not neutral. It was sacred currency. You bowed, she accepted, and the throne was built. Not from malice, from design. The unconscious feminine does not ascend through declaration. She is crowned by male submission. One apology at a time. One small collapse of male certainty. One retraction of tone. One softening of opinion. One murmured admission that her perception is the higher law. You think you're being emotionally intelligent, but your intelligence is only building a ladder and you are kneeling at the top. You didn't see the structure being assembled. You thought it was a conversation. You thought it was growth. But each time you said, "I see your point," and didn't mean it. The bricks were laid. Each time you apologized to calm the storm. Not because of inner conviction, but because of emotional strategy, another step placed beneath her feet. And now she looks down at you not with warmth, but with expectation. You don't understand why her eyes have grown cold, why her affection withers even as you strive to be better. You ask, "What else can I do?" And the very question exposes the architecture. You are not in love. You are in compliance. You are no longer choosing, you are negotiating your existence. The throne sits at the center of this new temple, draped not in silk, but in your dignity. Every time you flinch before her disappointment, another cushion is added to her seat. Every time you say you're right when you don't believe it, another gemstone is stitched into her crown. You think you're protecting harmony. You're feeding an altar that only devours. And here's the horror: she didn't ask for this throne, but she will sit in it, because once you offer the kingdom of your self-trust, few can resist ruling. And once ruled, few can unlearn the power of punishment without words. She needn't yell, she needn't rage, her power becomes atmospheric, a shift in the wind, a sudden delay in affection, a longer pause between text replies. She does not need to punish, she only needs to withdraw. And the male soul, conditioned to chase validation, will lunge forward with another apology, another explanation, another surrender. You think if I'm just clear enough, calm enough, honest enough, she'll descend the throne and sit beside me again. But she won't, because you've trained her not with words, but with your recoil that the seat of power belongs to her, and that the price of your safety is her approval. Freud would not condemn you. He would only stare, fascinated, because what you've constructed is not a relationship. It's a psychic reenactment of the child-mother bond, a ritual of supplication, where the male projects the supreme power of emotional judgment onto the female and then orbits it like a guilty moon. You are no longer speaking to her. You are speaking to the part of yourself that fears abandonment, and she is no longer responding as herself. She is channeling the ancient feminine, the archetypal force that does not want apology, but thrives on control earned through it. She has not changed. You have trained her. Each time you said, "I'm sorry," to dodge discomfort instead of embodying truth, you taught her that discomfort is your leash, and she tugged it, and it worked. Now, even when you're not at fault, you feel pressure to concede, not because she demands it, but because the throne demands it. And the throne is no longer hers. It lives inside you. It's the voice that tells you to adjust, to edit, to backtrack, to soften preemptively before she even speaks. You think you're being respectful, but you are kneeling before a ghost. The ghost of her disappointment, the ghost of her disapproval, the ghost of your own unworthiness, now wearing her perfume and her sighs. This is not love. This is fear in a tailored suit. And still, you offer another apology. You say, "I didn't mean to upset you." But what you mean is, please don't retreat. Please don't judge. Please don't raise the scepter of silence again. She hears that. Not in your words, but in the hollow underneath them. She senses that you no longer trust yourself, that you fear the loss of her gaze more than the loss of your own voice. And something in her recoils, not because she's cruel, but because no woman can remain attracted to a man who sacrifices his inner king on the altar of her temporary mood. You've confused apology with love, but love requires presence, not groveling. And now, she sees in you not presence but anticipation of punishment. You think this will bring her closer, but it makes her godlike, and gods are not held. Gods are worshipped until they are bored. You still think if I'm perfect enough, she'll feel safe enough to soften again. But what softens her is not apology. What softens her is the unshakable self that does not fear her disapproval, that can witness her chaos without offering a receipt for every emotional charge. You say you want peace, but peace bought with apology is just truce under threat. You say you want connection, but connection that requires a man to flinch at every frown is not connection. It's captivity in velvet cuffs. And the throne, it now lives in her body. She walks with it. It's in the way she asks questions already knowing the apology is coming. It's in the way she withholds affection not as punishment but as prophecy. She knows the ritual. She knows you will offer blood before she even lifts the blade. You kneel before her love. She never asked you to, but now, if you stand, it feels like rebellion, and so you stay low, comfortable, safe, powerless. But the unconscious never lies. And in dreams, even in waking hallucinations, you'll see the throne. It will haunt the periphery of your desire. You'll picture her sitting there, amused, not cruel, not evil, just enthroned, and you reaching for her hand, only to be met with the velvet glove of silent expectation. And when you finally scream, not at her, but into the mirror, the truth will crack its way up from the spine. You weren't dominated, you volunteered. She is seated on a throne made of your words, and yet you still ask her if you're being heard. In the corner of the room, your voice hangs like a velvet curtain once drawn open in hope, now hiding a man who forgot how to speak without trembling. Behind her eyes, a single question you never dared to ask if she left the throne empty. Would you dare sit again, or would you apologize to the silence for standing?